Greetings. You're listening to Rebels Remembered, featuring Caitlin DeFord and Kelsey DeFord.
Greetings, travelers across the galaxy. I am Caitlin.
I am Kelsey.
And this is Rebels Remembered. And today we are discussing Season 1, Episode 10, Path of the Jedi.
Yeah, so Path of the Jedi sort of picks up where Gathering Forces left off with Ezra in the last episode. Kind of had a little dark side moment when he was trying to save Kanan from the Inquisitor. And this also premiered on January 5th, 2014? Or 2015? Yeah. Whatever that in my notes, sorry. Reminder that we're now in 2015 of Rebels. And also there was a break. So Gathering Forces was November 24th, 2014. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned the last one we had this long break where there was nothing.
Yeah.
So then we get this episode. According to StarWars.com, the synopsis states, one of the rebel crew must face a great challenge as part of their growth as a member of the team. This was written by Charles Murray. I didn't really have enough research on Charles. Do you have anything?
I did. Charles Murray wrote a couple of episodes with Clone Wars. He also wrote those couple of episodes where Ahsoka is being framed. He wrote a couple of those. So The Lost Jedi, he wrote.
I knew his name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place exactly where.
Yeah, I thought it was odd too, because I think this is one of the only.
I think so.
Rebels when he wrote, so I was like, who are you? So I had to research him, but yeah, he wrote a couple of Clone Wars episodes.
It's a pretty good episode. I mean, we're gonna probably say this for the entire season.
Yeah, probably. Maybe,
yeah. Because season 1 is just, I feel like it has a really solid foundation in these characters. This was directed by Dave Filoni, who I believe this is the first one he directs or gets a direct credit by. Is that correct?
Sounds right.
Again, this sort of. I watched Rebels Recon about this episode on StarWars.com, which was a recap videos that the marketing team did for the show. And one thing that someone mentioned, I can't remember who it was in the Recon video, was this episode slows the pacing down because the last two have been action, motion, so it kind of slows it down to allow us to look into how Kanan and Ezra, in particular, those two characters are growing as characters and on their journey.
We start this episode off with, Kanan has to help Ezra because of what happened previously. In the previous episode, I mean, that was a huge moment for Ezra, him tapping into a little bit of the dark side there. So, yeah, I think it was needed to slow down and go, okay, what's going to happen now with these two characters and where are they going to go from here?
So we open with Kanan, who I believe is meditating with this holocron, and honestly, and we'll get to it in a minute, but when I first watched that, I'm going, what is that holocron doing? What is all of the maps? And, I didn't understand any of that. So we've got Ezra, who's running to, I guess he's obviously late for their Jedi session or their class or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And that's, Kanan's looking for him. He asks where is he?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that part.
He doesn't know where he's at, and Ezra's late, which is not good after what you just went through. Yeah. So I feel like that's probably in Kanan's head, too. Like, really, dude? Now you're going to be late? What?
Yeah, and I didn't get that because initially when I rewatched it, he shows up and he's like, sorry, I was with Sabine, and we'll find out later what Sabine and him were doing later in the plot. I didn't understand why Kanan was being so grumpy.
Yeah.
Because he is very, grumpy with Ezra's like, I'm sorry I was late, and he gets really, really mad. I'm like, why is he? But then I'm like, yeah, this kid just views the dark side, and he doesn't understand how serious that is. Mm-hmm. So I kind of understand Kanan a little bit.
He tells him that, I have to know if you're ready, and he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, it's a test to show if you are truly meant to be a Jedi. Meant to be on this path. That you're, this training and everything. Which is huge.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I think you're right. I feel like Ezra doesn't he's not grasping the seriousness of the situation, I guess. Yeah.
But he's also he just turned 15.
True. I don't want to do my chores. What?
Jedi journey? I do like this little moment that Kanan has with Hera, though, when he's like, I need to go over to this temple, and basically the context of the episode is there are several Jedi temples throughout the galaxy because the Jedi have been around for a while, and they have
just thousands of years.
Sure they would make, their own temples and things. And apparently that's where Kanan's going to take him. He's not even sure that, he's very unsure of himself.
Yeah.
And I like how, I think I have it in my notes here somewhere.
Hera tells him, you have to help him. And he said, I hope I can.
And she says, her word is, I know you can. So that's like giving him the boost of confidence that he needs in himself to help Ezra.
You can always rely on Hera for those little boosts of confidence, I think.
Oh, yeah, so they're on the Phantom going to one of these temples, and that's when Kanan explains that there's temples around, and,
the first part of the test is Ezra has to find it.
Yes.
Which kind of stinks. It's like, really? That's what, like, it's like, oh, we're doing a test, but first you have to find said place where a test is going to take place. And eventually, he does. He taps into the Force and eventually makes a connection. And what's funny, though, is he's like, I can't give you the coordinates, but I can direct us there. And as they're getting to the temple, Kanan goes, autopilot disengaged. Like, he already had it.
So he knew the whole time. So that was a callback to earlier when he had that star map in the holocron. He was meditating on it, trying to find out the temple. So he had already located it when he was asking Ezra to find it.
He just wanted to see if he was testing him to see if he could actually find it. Which, here's another thing. I read this somewhere. Supposedly, now I could be totally wrong on this, but I distinctly remember reading this in like trivia or something they were gonna put in, but they didn't. Was that Lethal's surface has remnants of kyber crystals in it.
Yes. So that made me a justification of why that temple is there in the first place.
Yeah.
Rebels Recon touched on it a little bit. I know Dave Filoni said there was some concern about, oh, that's convenient. There's a Jedi temple right on Lothal, but, there's some concern about how convenient it is for that temple to be on Lothal, but you start to think about it, it's like, kind of makes sense. So they reach this temple, and it looks like a rock. I was reminded of the SpongeBob, that's just a stupid boulder. No, it's not just a boulder, it's a rock. Well, this is not just a rock, it's a temple.
Yeah, it's kind of built within the Earth. Or, not the Earth, the surface of the planet. So they get to this temple, and what is even worse, I just feel so bad for Ezra here, because Kanan goes, you better figure out how we get inside. So not only did you want me to find him, now I'm the one that has to find out how to open it.
Because he says the Empire's put surveillance on some temples. Of these places, some of these temples.
So now he tasks Ezra to find the door. Which is a lot. Like, can't you just do it,
Well, it's interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but, Ezra already, we saw in the last episode, does have some connection to living things.
Yes.
To me, I believe in the Force, I guess, and I was in the Star Wars universe and that kind of thing, but is the temple living?
Well, when he can't figure out how to get inside, Kanan says, listen, don't look, listen to the stone and its story. So he talks about it like it's a living thing, but the Force, everything is living. So it's kind of like, the best way to describe it is the Native Americans, they believe everything is living. A rock is living.
Okay.
Not all, not blanket them all, but there is one specific branch where everything has a soul. Okay. Even rocks.
So their version of living is tied to the stories and experiences. So that's the way I took it. It's the stories and experiences of people that have already gone through this temple or been in it.
Probably, yeah. I mean, that temple was probably just oozing with force.
So Ezra is able to make a connection to the stone.
Yes.
Kanan calls it a stone, not a rock. Like I call it a rock.
And what I find interesting, he says, the stone wants to admit me. No, not me. Us. So now it's almost like not only does Ezra need to go inside here to experience something, but Kanan does too.
Yeah. And I think that, again, I think that's needed because we can obviously tell, again, with Kanan, and we get little things about his backstory. Not a whole lot. We get little sprinkles every now and then, like when they're on their way on the Phantom and he says, back when I was your age, it was different. You know, there was a whole bunch of Jedi, and now there's very far few between.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like this episode, while it is an Ezra-centric episode, Kanan needs some sort of journey here. Not test necessarily, but some sort of enlightenment, I guess.
Yeah.
So they go inside the temple, and Kanan says, don't lose focus, because if you lose focus, I don't want this thing crashing down on our heads. They go inside the temple, and lo and behold, there's some dead, very creepy Jedi Masters just chilling, like their bones.
Disney put skeletons. We already saw one skeleton. We saw, Luminara skeleton. Now we see more than one in this episode. So, again, don't say that Disney's, like, all cutesy and stuff. Like,
It's pretty dark. Then Ezra loses focus because I think he says dead guys are distracting, which rightfully so.
Oh.
I mean, that is kind of creepy. And I love this part where, you know, Ezra's like, oh, I'll be fine as long as you're with me. And Kanan's like, I'm not going with you. And he's like, what, why? You know, it's kind of that moment of, this is a test for you
and
that you
alone.
have to figure out.
Mm-hmm. And then he mentions, like, the skeletons were masters that died waiting on their Padawans.
Yeah, he said, I'm going to be right here with other masters who died waiting for their Padawans that never returned.
So where did the Padawans go?
They probably
like,
died
are there
too.
Skeletons in this whole thing? Like,
They probably got lost.
that's disturbing.
Which means they failed, essentially.
Yeah, they failed the test.
Which is very disturbing.
Also, I put in my trivia thing here, the columns that are in the main, I want to say lobby. That's what it looks like. I'm sorry. The main area they first walk in the temple, it was inspired by, it's got some text wrapped around. Like
It's throughout this whole episode, too.
It's throughout the whole episode. It was from Ralph McQuarrie's illustration of a Yavin temple. It called Illustrations of Star Wars or
yep.
something. And it was released in 1995.
So Ezra goes inside the temple, and the last thing Kanan tells him is, he said, what should I be looking for? And Kanan says, nothing and everything. Which is kind of an oxymoron, but...
And then what I thought was interesting is that Kanan says, that's what my master told me. So I'm like, he probably went through something similar.
Yeah. So Ezra goes inside. He comes upon 3 doors, and he's like, I don't know what to pick. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And all of a sudden, Kanan appears and is like, really? That's what you're doing to choose? And I also love it when Kanan enters here because you hear that little force. I don't know if you heard it.
Yeah, I heard it.
And Ezra's like, what are you doing here? I'm supposed to do this for myself. And he's like, second thoughts. Which is like, okay, you don't believe that I can do this on my own. Kanan's running ahead of him. Ezra kind of loses pace with him. And then he hears Kanan scream. And he finds the Inquisitor standing over him.
I think this calls back, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to gathering forces. Because his fear then was losing Kanan and everybody, so...
Yeah, this whole episode calls upon fears that Ezra, the fears that Ezra faces in this episode were brought about in the previous one.
Yeah.
So, like, losing my master, losing my friends, losing my family, all of that is kind of bubbling to the surface here. Well, I'm also gonna, like, surprise our listeners, but if you should have already watched the episode before you listen to us talk about it. Obviously, it's not Kanan and the Inquisitor.
Right.
They're not really there.
Right. And I first watched this going, oh my god, Kanan just...
No, I knew.
I didn't. I was freaking out. And then all of a sudden, after he kicks, this Inquisitor kills Kanan, stabs him with a...
Yeah.
The not Inquisitor stabs not Kanan, kicks him off a ledge. Ezra falls backwards, and then he's on the ghost. Okay, right then I knew, like, this
No, I
isn't
knew
real.
then because he told him, I'm not going with you, I'm staying here. And I'm like, then when he appeared, he's like, what about leaving it to myself or whatever? He's like, second thoughts.
Well, he was cranky at the beginning, so that's why
No, I was like,
kind of like, I don't know.
I don't think that's really him. No, I don't think he's really there. So yeah, he kills non-Inquisitor, kills non-Kanan. And Ezra, his first instinct is...
He tries to draw Kanan's lightsaber, but then he can't use it.
But he also says, what?
I'll make you pay.
Yeah, you're not learning. That's not the Jedi way. That's why you're here. And then he falls backward off the cliff, and that's when he lands on the ghost. Which, obviously, that's not there either, because he's in the temple still.
Well, not only that, but in this scene, when you have his visions of the ghost crew, they're so out of character. Like, I don't know how to put it. It'd be like my worst perception of you and what you might think of me when I'm not in the room, if that makes sense. That's what I kind of got. But even then, I was like, one, I knew, because you can't be in the temple and then go on the ghost, so I knew it's not real. But...
Well, also, if you listen to what they say, it's almost Ezra's inner fears of how he perceives they think of him.
Yeah.
Because Zeb's like, oh, I get my bunk back to myself. Hera's like,
we just could have used him.
Okay, used him. Sabine refers to him as a child or a kid or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if that's kind of sad. If that's Ezra's worst fear of like how they would. Of course, I guess he also has that fear of abandonment.
He's got
too.
The abandonment issues, and usually abandonment issues tie back to not only his parents, but I'm sure like internally you might be blaming yourself for like, what did I do to cause that to happen?
Yeah. He overhears the crew in the middle of their conversation expressing their doubt and dislike for him, and he is stung by their words. At last, Zeb spots him and says, well, look who's here. Nothing personal, kid. But Ezra then realizes this doesn't make sense. He's in the temple, he's not on the ghost. But as soon as he makes this connection, all of a sudden, here's the Inquisitor killing all of his friends.
And we don't see their deaths. You can't see what I'm doing with my hand. I'm doing the air quotes.
Air quotes.
With my fingers. You don't see their deaths on screen, but I think you do like see Sabine's like arm or feet or something.
Which to me it's more powerful because you see their silhouettes.
That's true.
So you're kind of using imagination of what Ezra's seeing.
Yeah, that's... I also like when after he kills his friends, and then he's just like backing away from the Inquisitor, and the Inquisitor comes to that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there's that ladder there, and I always want him to go slash
cut
through it with the lightsaber. No, he just nonchalantly just walks around
it like, huh. That would have been, yeah, I would have added that little bit of animation there.
But maybe I think the scariest thing about Inquisitor, he doesn't have to be that physical with threatening and things like that. He can just move around and be there. Mm-hmm. And he's already had that presence. It's really frightening.
And as he gets closer and closer to Ezra, the doors of the ghost open, and he's falling again, and he's back in the temple. But this whole through, Kanan dying, his friends talking crap about him, and the Inquisitor just being a presence. Mm-hmm. It all ties back to what he's afraid of. Mm-hmm. And what sucks is, when he's back in the temple, which he never left, but I'm going to say back in the temple with air quotes, he has this moment where he's like, I'm abandoned, I'm alone again. Mm-hmm. But then he has this moment of, wait, I've been alone. I've been by myself since I was 7. I could totally take care of myself. Like, he has this little boost of confidence. He's like, maybe Kanan is not dead. Maybe he's just injured. And I'm like, I love that.
I laughed at that because I'm like, boy, you're so optimistic.
Yeah.
I can't see me watching someone get stabbed through the chest, kicked off into the abyss, and go, yeah, you're probably injured.
He might just need my help. He's fine.
It's just a flesh wound.
'Tis but the flesh wound. So he's heading back in, I guess, to help the injured Kanan that he refers to. And here's the Inquisitor again. Walks right out up to him. And here's where I really thought he was really there. When he has this moment with the Inquisitor, he says, no, you're not really here. Everything I just saw was an illusion. And then he grabs his face. He's like, that may have been, but I'm not. So I'm like, oh, it's the real one.
Into thinking that's the real one. The other one was a fake one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is sort of the part where he sort of confronts that fear. Like, when you vocally say your fear, it will lose some power over you. Mm-hmm. Like, am I afraid of dying? Am I afraid of being abandoned? Am I afraid of letting Kanan down? Yep. But,
he kind of has this moment of I think I've used this phrase a lot when it comes to Ezra. He just lets go. Yeah. And just taps into the Force. He lets go of fear and everything. And he just like, I think he has that moment. He's like, I'm not afraid. Now, me, I would be terrified.
Yeah, that was my question. Do you think you could have gone through this temple and passed?
No. Because I have anxiety, and fear is very strong in me. Very strong. Mm-hmm.
I would say the same. It would be
I couldn't be like Ezra and go, I'm not afraid, and just stand there while this Inquisitor, he stands his ground. The Inquisitor raises a lightsaber, but his strike passes straight through him. After that moment of, okay, the Inquisitor's gone, I've kind of confronted some fears of mine, I've kind of let go, and he has this moment where he's just, I guess Ezra's kind of like me in the sense that when I relax and just completely let go, that's where the best thinking is.
Yeah, I would agree.
When you
have more clarity.
Yeah. So as he's sitting there, I think after the Inquisitor strikes him, he like leans against a wall or whatever. This voice from nowhere starts talking to him.
And it is actually Yoda, but Ezra does not know that. Ezra has no idea who Yoda is. Of course, if you are well versed in Star Wars, you know this is Yoda talking. This is actually Frank Oz. So this is the Yoda, like the one that was in Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, the prequel films. I have some trivia about that. This is from the TV Guide article from back in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So in December of December 15th, 2014, it was announced that Yoda would appear in this episode. This was during the hiatus. So Dave Filoni stated that maintaining continuity with the official Star Wars canon was important. Specifically, Yoda was hiding in Dagobah during the time period which the show was set. This is why you hear him from afar. He's reaching out to the Force to speak because it helped ensure the audience did not think that he just left Dagobah, because that's where he went to hiding. And there was a homage. It was revealed in the TV Guide article that one of the homages would be to Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So when Yoda starts speaking to Ezra, it's these kind of fairy lights. They call them fairy lights. Yeah, they look like fireflies.
And he refers to Ezra. He doesn't tell him who he is. He says, "I'm a guide."
Yeah, he doesn't even say his name. But that light kind of came from, I believe, it was an episode of Clone Wars called Voices, which took place on Dagobah, which Yoda himself confronted these kind of like similar lights on that episode. So Yoda's in the picture now. Woohoo! And I also like that the temple itself feels lighter and it looks lighter when he appears.
It does. I didn't think about that. Like, the environment around Ezra kind of changes after that. And the fairy lights, Ezra kind of just follows them.
Yeah.
And of course he leads him to the same 3 doors that he went through at the beginning. And my favorite line that Ezra says is, "Which way is the right way?" Because I think everybody asks that in life. Now whether you believe in, like Mark Hamill says, the Force is religion's greatest hits. You know, whatever you believe in, if you believe in whatever you believe in, it's a belief that there's a power that will help not make the decision for you, but will help guide you in those decisions. So that's why Yoda tells him, "I can't pick it for you. You have to decide."
But I do like how Yoda mentions, like, does Kanan decide everything? He doesn't, I'm paraphrasing, he doesn't say this, but it's like, kind of says, what, you would need Kanan to decide everything for you? And he's like, no. It's sort of like a parent. That person's not going to be around with you for the rest of your life for 24/7. You have to make, there's certain decisions that are come up you have to make without their input, you know.
So as Yoda's leading Ezra to the temple, we cut back to Kanan, and he starts talking to Kanan, and Kanan immediately knows who it is.
Well, the reason Yoda talks to him is because he was like, well, he's taking too long.
Yeah, that's what it is. It starts, he's like, the kid's taking too long, you know, and then Yoda answers with, "Do you not remember your own training?" I mean, Depa did not go in after you. If this would have been, you know, back in the day, she wouldn't have not went after you. Because that's part of the trials. And he kind of has this moment with Kanan where, kind of the same thing with Ezra in the last episode, like, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yes, like, that's what I wrote, like, very similar to what Kanan told Ezra in the last episode. Be honest with yourself and your feelings. And
Yoda says, you know, "You're a now master, are you?" And then he doesn't answer. That's what he says, "Of this decision, honest you must be. Tell the truth." How do you feel about that? How you dealing with it?
And again, we get small snippets of Kanan's backstory. He says, "I won't let him lose his way, not like I did. I doubt myself, not his abilities." So little snippets like that.
Also, you have to remember, Kanan didn't really finish his training either.
No.
So there's that too.
But by that admission of, my master told me about this, nothing and everything. So we know he probably went through this trial, but I don't think he went all the way up, you know, to be a knight, you know, because of Order 66 and things happen, and, you know.
So then we come back to Ezra, and he leads into this huge room, like these, I don't know how to describe it. How would you describe that?
The end of a video game level, when you go into this one room and there's one spotlight with a thing you have to collect, and that's the end of the level.
Yeah, I guess that is the way to describe it. And Yoda starts asking him questions like, "Why must you become a Jedi?" And the way he starts answering is not very Jedi-like, because he's like, well, I have power, and I'll make everybody, the Empire, suffer for what happened to my parents. I don't want to be helpless anymore. Like, those answers are not, that's not, it's almost like in a job interview. That's not the best answer.
I want to make my enemies suffer.
I want to bring death to my enemies.
He's like, I don't know. Like, he's very nonchalant about it. Like,
Yeah.
Kanan thinks I can.
I'm just here. I'm just living life. Like, uses Kanan thinks I can. So Ezra doesn't really truly believe in himself.
Elf either, yeah.
And I think he mentioned that at the beginning of the episode. And he's like, I want to be the Jedi you see in me, the one that I don't see in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yoda tells Ezra that he senses a lot of anger, a lot of fear inside of him. But then he's like, well, Jedi way is revenge. Teach you this, your master did? And then Ezra starts defending Kanan, like, no, he's a good master, And he kind of starts changing his tune with this journey that he's been on so far. He's seen what the Ghost Crew specifically has done for others. Something he didn't really... He was only, out to care for himself. Didn't really care about other people.
It ties back into Spark of Rebellion Part 1 and 2. This idea of selflessness and, I think it's a theme that kind of goes through this, this season of this series, really.
It's like, okay, now you're getting it. Jedi is about selflessness and protection.
Mm-hmm.
You don't kill,
but not attachment. You can't be attached to what you're protecting.
Don't even... You're Sith, whatever. And my favorite part is he says, they give everything away, and I see how it makes people feel. I don't get emotional talking about it.
That's my favorite quote in the whole episode.
Yoda says, how? And he says, they feel alive like I do now. I want to cry every time. That's just so emotional, is that they're good people. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to find people out in the world that aren't in it for themselves. They're in it to help. Mm-hmm. Genuinely care and help other people.
And not only other people, but him. He's found a new family, essentially, that would do anything for him. I think he believes that. I think that that's why it can be hard for Ezra, because you have this family, they're amazing people, and they see so much greatness in you, but you don't see it in yourself.
So then Yoda's like, oh, okay. You're starting to say the right things.
But I like how he says, a Jedi you may yet be, just to tease us. But then he does give him the little kyber crystal that comes down. I don't know how that happened, but I don't know, how that transpired. He just reached through the force and just pulled it out of the ceiling. I don't know.
And I love how when Ezra holds it, he's like, oh, this is pretty.
Yeah, he doesn't know what it is.
This is pretty. It's mine. Yay. I got a rock out of it. I got a little rock out of a big rock.
You got a souvenir, kid. That's what you got.
So after that, he gets his kyber crystal, and he meets up with Kanan. And he shows him, he's like, look what I got, And he's like, Kanan's surprised. Mm-hmm. Like, dude, you just totally just skipped 3 grades. And he's like, tells him he has a kyber crystal, which Ezra has no idea what that is. I didn't either at the time. So he gets his kyber crystal, they exit the temple, and my favorite part, one of my favorite lines is, Ezra says, who knows what else is in there? And Kanan says, I know what's in there in the past. We gotta move forward.
But then he also mentions that he hopes it'll be there still after they're gone. I did have some questions about that were kind of answered in Rebels Recon, and it's something that I didn't think about in this episode, is Pablo Hidalgo and Carrie Beck specifically were talking about the Jedi trials. And there is so much debate on the trials. Has everyone done them? What constitutes a trial? And I think they both said it's customized to the Force user. Carrie Beck said Jedi temples are responsive to who you are. So, for example, the example she brought up, and I guess I forgot about it, she brought up Luke in the cave on Dagobah.
Yeah.
Very similar. That was a trial that he failed. Yeah. Miserably failed that. And there's different names for them. There's like trial of fear, courage,
trial of flesh.
But specifically, I would think, because I'm going to grow a pocket protector and be a generic nerd here for a minute, I would think that this episode would be trial of courage. I would think.
Well, it's definitely about confronting fear,
Yeah.
so I could see that.
So I have this thing about the trial of courage from Wikipedia, and it mentions that because it was important to remain in the dark about what one would face during the test, most Jedi did not divulge details on their individual test. Which explains why Depa told him nothing and everything. It's almost like, I can't tell you what I experienced because what I experienced is going to be different than what you're experiencing. So apparently before it was mainstreamed, battlefield heroics or facing down a Sith Lord qualified as passing. So, for example, your favorite guy, Obi-Wan, didn't have to do the trials.
Well, yeah, he killed Maul.
He killed Maul, so...
Well, I mean, killed. In my brain, he killed him.
Yeah. So it says, well, they use the word defeated. Okay. So Kenobi defeated Maul, thereby passing the trials in the eyes of the Council. And then Anakin Skywalker was foregoed, basically passed through the trials because of his bravery during the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like if you are extremely heroic and you do all these cool things, you get a pass.
I mean, fighting a Sith Lord is pretty big.
I know, it's pretty hard. Yeah.
So, after all that, we end this episode with Ezra showing the ghost crew the lightsaber he built, and looks like all of them contributed, which I think is really nice, because it's like almost like they built it together in a way. Like, it kind of represents not just Ezra, because he's the one that had to build the thing, but he incorporated the people that he cared about into it.
I didn't think about it that way. Yeah.
And I will say, I don't care what anybody says. I know when this episode came out, there was a lot of hate on his lightsaber. I, for one, loved it.
By the way, Disney Parks, put that one.
Please! I'm begging you. We're begging.
But what would you rate this episode?
I gave it a 7 out of 10. When I first watched it, I probably would have gave it a 9.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But I'm trying to step back from nostalgia and just
Yeah.
kind of look at it for everything that it is.
Yeah, I would say 7. It's nice to, it's like a nice little thing with Kanan and Ezra kind of slowing the pace down. Nice little episode. I'd say 7 too.
I will say, without getting emotional, because this episode, a lot of season 1 episodes make me emotional. Just because I don't care what it misses. I love season 1 of Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
When these aired, I think I've mentioned this before, and I'll probably reiterate it through the whole thing. I was in college. I was just starting college. So when this episode aired, I was starting my second semester or second year, actually. Wow. First and second year of college was very, very difficult. And again, why I relate to Ezra so much is you're out in the world, your parents, I mean, I don't want to say we were shielded and protected as children, but we were very close to our parents. We've all been very close to our parents. When you're out in the real world in college, your parents are not there. So if you have an issue, you have to confront it. You have to talk to the professor. You have to make sure you're keeping track of everything by yourself.
And stuff, yeah.
So I really connected with Ezra with your path you have to decide. Especially that part when Kanan's like, I can't go with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt that too. Yeah.
I literally graduated December of 2017. And then March Rebels ended. So it was literally
March of 2018.
So literally the show was like right in college, which is a very transformative time for any young adult going through life.
For sure. I think that was sweet to end up on. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, though. It's like you reach a certain age and you're like, can't you do this for me? Can't you write me a note to get me out of class? Can't you do A, B, and C? But yeah, you were thrown into, okay, you're on your own. We'll be here to support you, but you're not going to be with every decision you make.
And I call my parents a lot. And I didn't even live on campus. I still lived at home, you know? I mean, maybe college was a trial.
Yeah.
Maybe it was for me.
Alright, guys, you can find us on Rebels Remembered on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. And I think we're going to try and start up a Facebook
I think so,
page.
yeah.
SoundCloud, unfortunately, is wanting us to pay for
more than so many uploads.
We have to have so many uploads, and we wouldn't want to delete the other ones, especially for some of the viewers that we have on there. So we will see you next time, and everyone have an awesome day.